Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis show. This episode, one of my favorite people, one of my good close friends and brother in arms from the Legion, Scott Kinder. Yeah, he's looking behind him. Those of you who in radio land, picture this: a man in a t-shirt with a dog over his shoulder, a multicolored dog. I won't go into what it reminds me of. Uh, Looking over his shoulder to see who else is there, but it's just him. Scott, brother, Scott Kinder, by the way. Scott, good to see you, man. Good to have you on the show.
No, thanks guys for having me again. It's been a while, and it's good to see you too.
Yeah. And I tell you what, one of the reasons I love having Scott on the show, not that it's just always easy to talk to him, but DOL coach is, man, this is perfect time. I love when things fall into place. Not everything is planned out, but you know what? When you see an opportunity, you jump on it. That's what Scott does. And what is going on with DOL coach, and this being Veterans Day week, the timing couldn't be better. So Scott, man, tell us what's happened. Well, I don't want to take an hour and a half to tell us everything is what's happening with DOL coach, because I know a lot's going on. Give us a couple of awesome highlights of what y'all got going on.
No, easy. The biggest one that comes to mind, probably for the crowd listening to this, we've just pulled metrics for the year, and in 2021, we've trained just at 12,000 military and first responders, and roughly 9,000 of them have gotten certifications because they've completed all the makeup sessions. And those who don't have, the delta is that they missed a session and haven't done the work yet, which never expires. So we're definitely very happy with that number. My team is done a fantastic job, and that's over 40 plus courses that we've run. And we've gotten some
Scott, I got to stop you, man. Courses in what?
Oh, courses in project management certification. So we get people certified in project management, and we do so without the hustle and bustle and the fuss that the normal PM certs come with, and not watering down the standards, but keeping it more relevant and topical based. And so the biggest news that we have on Veterans Day is, so we've trained and certified just at 12,000 with live training, and we finally cracked the nut on a project that I've been working on for about 2 years now, for a video on demand certification course. And it's 12 sessions, all at your own pace, all on the site, in veterans and first responders, church service members, people that work for church and Christian-based organizations, and anybody who works in the public sector will get the course for $50 out of pocket. And that includes lifetime certification as a certified project officer. And so it's just been putting the 20-hour days trying to get that whole thing launched, and we're already selling early bird seats and getting it filled. So, but it's cool because we set what I call a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal for the next year. And it's to double, if not triple, the throughput for our courses. And this video on demand course is exactly how we'll do that, because there's obviously a lot of people around the globe, and time constraints, and not everybody can make the meeting times that we try and be adaptive to. So it's going to be good. So 25,000 is our goal next year, to help those who serve truly better themselves in their teams.
What's the ramp up like building up to something like that? Because I think a lot of time people think of, dropping a product or a service. It's like, oh, you design it months ago, put it all together, get all the sales stuff together, and then you just put it out. But obviously, you're 2 days out from this. I'm sure there's a lot more going on than that.
There's, I'll tell you what, at least for me, it's a lot of second guessing yourself. Just about an hour ago, I called my chief development officer, Heather, and I said, I'm doubting myself on the number of quiz questions, because for the first time in a course, just to maintain the standards of the learning, there's unlimited attempts to pass, but a 10-question quiz at the end of each session. And so as I was putting the finishing touches on 120 quiz questions, I went, man, that sounds like a lot. And I called Heather, and she's like, nope, good to go, stay the course. And so self-doubt creeps in, and I'm never one to I won't release something unless I believe in it. But I do acknowledge this will be a 1.0 release, and we've got December pretty much, minus 2 corporate clients that we've landed, pretty much open to just continually make adjustments to really quickly ramp it up to a 2.0, and based upon the feedback of customers. So it's just it's nerve wracking, and I don't say that as a guy that gets stressed, but it's just honoring promises and commitments, and making sure that the I's are dotted and T's are crossed.
I'm gonna take a step back because we got to fill in a gap because it has been a while since you've been in the show. I think last time you were on the show, you were in Tasmania, if I remember correct. It's been that long, and
Yep.
you had maybe, I don't know, maybe a trained if a hundred folks in America on project management. Now we're looking. I mean, that's some higher math with exponentials and things like that that I'm not willing to do at this point. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do some chalkboard.
Break out your
writing.
abacus. Yeah.
Yeah, some hibiscus. See, I can't even say the word. I just use your calculator. But what I think is really interesting, and I always, every time I talk to you about this, I always snicker because I know you're a Dave Ramsey fan. And Dave with his famous quote of "I'm a 35-year overnight success."
Yeah.
People are probably looking at you going, "Holy crap! In a year he did 12." Tell us where it started. I mean, let's just give it a little bit of history on this because I think that's really important for folks to understand.
So I've been in the U.S. now for just at a year. We're now in Franklin, Tennessee, and I always said that put me on U.S. soil and more access. Not waking up at 3 a.m. to deal with Americans on the latter half of their day when they probably don't want to talk to me. That I'd be more productive, and I think it's just that was the sauce. I will say that. So it all started. When did you and I meet, Otis? 5-6 years ago. I mean, a while ago. And I got brought on to a role with the Institute of Project Management located in Tasmania. They're a globally accredited certification body. And very quickly, I asked them, the leadership, why aren't you all over the US? Because I'm a PMP and hold a bunch of other certifications, and quite bluntly hated that whole process. It was expensive and annoying. But they said, hey, dude, if you want it, we're always been scared of it because PMP has a brand lock. And so the very first thing I did was, Otis was around way back when my first few weeks with trying to get the effort off the ground and getting partnerships done. And we landed a few with the Green Beret Foundation and the Honor Foundation and more. This is my third round of building a CPT team, and Otis is a CPT or certified project trainer. And he's the one I'll tell you is excluded from this whole statement I'm about to make next, which is we had a Zoom call on Friday with my team. My team's almost 20 people now, certified project trainers and others. And I said, all right, Scott, tell us one thing that you would do differently. And I said, it's not what I would do differently, because I tend not to live in regret land and kind of adapt and overcome, what being an SF guy is all about. But I said, I'll tell you what I will say is I'm looking at the names on this and previous rounds of CPTs. I'm very glad they're not on this call. And so if that's you and you listen to this podcast, maybe time for some self-reflection, but it's more of we've grown and we've been unapologetic about it. And again, it's just serving those who need service. It's helping transitioning military. We've also built a whole Mighty network. So we got our platform. It's still on Facebook and LinkedIn, but we've got a private network called Mighty Networks, and we have a free transition, free job postings, free mentor networks, free financial coaching, just whatever you want. If you get in there, it's not limited to military. So anybody can come in there and socialize. And if they start acting up, it's not Facebook. So we can kick them out real fast and keep the quality of who we want to serve and keep that evangelical nature alive and well.
There's two lessons I want to jump in on right there. And really it's number one, and this is the obvious one, it's the staying the course. It's understanding that the goal, what the goal is, what the vision is, and keeping that in mind, and the path to get there can be changed. I was about to say irrelevant, but it's not really irrelevant. It can change. Number two, for businesses, well, both of them apply to businesses and life, but is the right people. Mm-hmm. And what I think would be a really great point to discuss here, Scott, would be, how do you find the right people?
Without sounding flippant, it's both a lot of trial and error. But so my book is also coming out eventually, whenever it's back from the printer and more. Long
Book
story.
title is what?
Boom, a Green Beret's Guide to Winning in Business and Projects. After all the lessons that I have learned, but I built a model from an old course I used to teach after I left the government and the Army. The course is called the CEO course for creating elite organizations, because in Australia, people would ask me all the time, how do special forces do it? Because we look at you and you're unconventional and you're driven and so I said, well, there's a pipeline, there's a selection, there's all this other stuff, right? There's a soft truth. So, humans are more important than hardware and more. But the framework that I created based upon all of that was called the See and Act model. And I live this every day. And it's select, educate, and execute, adjust, communicate, and trust, right? So the first part, C, is passive, and it allows a leader or an organization to kind of visualize literally where they are. If they've already been dealt the people, then they've had the selection piece happen for them. They then go into the education piece, and it used to be select, educate, and empower, because I know that, myself included in this, everybody has strengths in which you empower those strengths, and everybody has what I'll call weaknesses. And that word makes people pretty irritated a lot of times, but everybody has weaknesses and everybody has strengths. And if you empower the strengths and educate the weaknesses with the right person, then you're going to get them into the right role. So we use tools at DOL Coach, my company, like the widget from Patrick Lencioni, and it's all about areas of working genius, working competency, and working frustration, and we put people in the right roles to do what they're best at doing. And to be clear, I changed the empower to execute at the end of the passive, because I figured out real quick through guiding leaders and giving a lot of leadership consultations that most leaders very passively, they keep looking up the stairs, right, and talking to you about what the top of the stairs looks like, but they never take a step onto the stairwell. They'll tell you all about it. They'll tell you their plans. And in SF, Otis and I'll call that analysis paralysis and all that other stuff. But you got to execute. So even at the end of passivity, getting that lay of the land, you got to start executing. And 9 times out of 10, that could be executing on the educational piece to get your people up to snuff. And that's why I'm so passionate about project management, because I hate the word management in general, but it's really, a lot of our courses are about leading teams, and our certifications are all about, and I had this conversation with my team this morning. If you're this level, you lead projects. If you're this level, you lead project teams. And if you're this level, you lead project managers. Now, leading is there intentionally, because you don't manage anything other than some tasks, right, or your time, but you lead people and things to the conclusion. And then this active part of that is, as soon as you start executing, and again, Otis will laugh, but you have to adjust, because the enemy has a vote. No contact, no plan survives contact with the enemy. And there's all these other special forces sayings that ground me. But the very first thing on the active part is adjust what you're doing to figure out what that looks like. And it's never a 180. It's rarely even a 90-degree turn. It's more of just adjusting the bow of the ship where it needs to go. Communicate on what you're doing. And anybody who knows me will tell you I over communicate what we're doing to people all the time, because I don't like that mushroom, analogy of kept in the dark and fed only poop. So you communicate, but then the last piece is, when you have a vision and you're executing it with the right people, is trust in the results, right? Like trust in the higher power, trust in what you're doing, but always be flexible enough to go back to adjusting to maintain that after you're communicating. And part of that trusted feedback, right, is circular in nature, because if you've selected the right people, as soon as you communicate what you're doing and then you start to trust, they will come back to you with more adjustments, and then it's the whole thing all over again. So it's a continuing cycle of evolution within organizations to make you start winning.
How do you inside your culture create that, I guess, culture around, improving like that, but without taking away the value of the end goal? Because I think that's something that people can get caught up in, where it's, it's criticizing your own work, and then all of a sudden you don't think it has that same value, even though really you're working to improve it and always getting better. So how do you balance that?
One, you have to admit that most goals are crap. that most goals that people set are crap, right? I mean, and the very first sign of a goal not being realized, they either quit, scope retreat, or they add on to the goal if they start to have some success, right? So on the one hand, as a leader of now a few people, I have to make sure that so I tell Heather all the time, like, we're not going to scale to suicide, right? We're not going to let success be our killer, meaning that if this had happened to me last November and December with some of the old CPTs that I had and an old partner that I had, and I hope she's listening to this, it would have been catastrophic to the whole effort that we had. And that sounds like I'm bearing a grudge, and I'm not. I just want her to develop as the leader that she advertises herself to be as well. But when you set those goals, you have to be adjustable. And I'm also very famous. I'll call Otis, I'll call Heather, and I'll obviously I talk to my wife all the time as well. But I have to be receptive that at least 7 out of every 10 ideas I have are probably bad or not worth doing at that point. And old Scott, Green Beret, fresh out of the A-team Scott, didn't like to hear that, right? Because I had this idea and I'm going to commit resources to it. But again, not to beat a dead horse, but project management, right? Resources are finite. Time, money, and people are all commodities. Time is constant. And again, I get laughed at all the time because I work crazy hours, but I also take an hour-long walk with my wife every day. When my 3-year-old gets home from school, I take a walk with her every day. And I never miss a soccer game for my middle son and do as much as I can, my older son as well. So I've missed out on as much of their life as I want to. So it's just nestling. You create the culture by nesting goals and priorities with what you have, because some goals, I can't just sit behind my laptop 20 hours a day. There's a period of false returns, right? To where I don't get any progress at all. But leading the people and trusting in what they're doing, throwing accountability in there, right? There's another big word. So coupling goals with accountabilities and some clear standards and guidance. That's how you create a culture. Mm-hmm. And Otis mentioned Dave Ramsey, right? Like, I'm probably one of the biggest Dave Ramsey fanboys out there, and I love almost everything that he does. It's awesome, right? Like he has one of the most winning cultures every year in Tennessee. He's one of the top 10 companies to work for. They just crested like 1,000+ employees. They've got all this. And he's clearly winning. They're turning over $350 million a year. It's incredible what they're doing. But again, he wrote the book EntreLeadership, and there's a whole lot of truisms in EntreLeadership, and that's what has complemented my business acumen as well. Not just that, but with the Green Beret background and the work experiences that I have. So,
well, one of the things, just to kind of, because I'm seeing a lot of it with DOL Coach too, is as you grow, the hardest thing that businesses, I would say the thing that businesses fail at the most is, and you kind of touched on this, is when, holy crap, we got to hire people. When, holy crap, we got to hire more people. And what happens is unintentionally, you go from the kitchen table, chatting about things to, yeah, all right, to 4 and 5 levels of managers deep. And if you're not consciously aware of that and don't become intentional in your actions and predict what's going on, that's where you lose control of your business. That's where you lose control of your culture. And catching that back up, if you wake up one day, Scott's, you said about 20 team members now. Is that where you're at?
Yep.
Yeah. If you hadn't been intentional with that, like maybe you were a couple of years ago, and you woke up and all of a sudden now there's 20 of them, it's like, it doesn't represent what you wanted to represent. And I think that's the lesson that, there was a hard lesson to learn and it stumbled through. But I think going back to what I said originally, the path doesn't have to remain the same as long as you keep that vision, the outcome, the goal, however you want to label it out there in radio land. As long as you keep that in mind, the top of the mountain's another way I refer to it. As long as you keep that in mind, you can get there and make those corrections. Even though, damn it, I guess we shouldn't have taken that left at Albuquerque, huh? But you were Bugs Bunny fans. We'll remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the greatest things being a special operator teaches you, right? I mean, few things are actually fatal as far as being a failure, right? So taking the left at Albuquerque, you might see some cool new things and you might do that. And it might, and a lot, I had this conversation with Heather and she's going to kick my butt when she does listen to this. And so we have a strategy meeting every Friday. We have a tactical meeting every Monday and an ops meeting every Wednesday just to make sure, right? So what are we looking at doing? And the strategy meeting is a good idea place to flow. And what do we really want to do and hit all these wickets? But nonetheless, she'll load up my my Trello board, my task manager with all these tasks, right? And then she'll load up hers and she'll start getting stressed when I talk to her. And she's looking stressed and I'm going, Heather, it was an arbitrary due date on a task. There's absolutely no urgency on that at all. Here's what we're going to do. Move the due date. And she's like, oh, and I'm like, just because we decided 3 weeks ago that we needed this crazy brochure idea to happen on the 4th of November, there's nothing urgent. It's not due to a client. It's not going to do anything. If it's not done till the 5th of November, nothing is going to die. That's not failure. That's just being adaptable. And so, but a lot of us, right, we set that, and I used to be very guilty of that. By God, if I put something on the calendar, I didn't care if I was up at 11:59 at night, like hammering it out to get it done. But what happens is you release a real crap product because of it. You release something that's not worthy of being released because you're not in the right mindset. You're trying to hurry. You're trying to multitask and do all these other things. And it's just move the date.
I love that. And, it reminds me of EntreLeadership. And we were talking about it earlier, but, talking about setting those deadlines for yourself and, it's holding yourself honest to it. I had to do this with my company Verbi earlier in the year. It's like, all right, hey, we're burning the ships. If we don't get this going in 5 weeks, I set a date, then we're done. And we didn't get it going in 5 weeks. And I think the interesting thing there is just taking the time and to understand the problem that you're trying to solve and recognize the urgency of it. Like you're saying, Scott, like for that example that is used, we're burning the ships. We got 5 weeks to figure this thing out. That's a deadline. That is a 5 weeks. We have to be ready. There's all sorts of other things where you're like, hey, hey, what are we going to do for Christmas this year? We got to have some Christmas events, virtually. It's like, okay, well, we don't need that next week, but let's get some plans together. And then if it's not there, okay, we can bump that a week, but then still just having that understanding of it, which I think goes back to, when you talk about the way you lead, the culture you've built of understanding the why behind things. Sometimes it means oversharing, but when you understand the why behind stuff, you understand the real urgency there. You understand what the actual deadline means. It's not just because I said Wednesday, it's because the client's coming on Thursday. There's reasons behind things. Yeah. And so it takes that kind of a trust to, share that kind of information with your team.
And that's exactly why we redefined, we used to have a Tuesday team sync and now it's the ops sync for everybody, right? I said, one, I don't want to just call it a team sync. I want to sync operations across and get feedback. But again, right, like if there's a tactical urgency to what we're trying to do, then we're going to prioritize efforts on that tactical issue to make sure that it's nailed down tight. If there's nothing but Scott looked at his calendar and thought that he was free the 3rd week in November and thought he could get it done then, and there's no urgency because it's just an idea that's percolating out there, I'm going to move that all day long. There's zero urgency and nothing behind that date at all. And I'm not going to apologize to anybody for it. And I will admit, my team gets incredibly frustrated with me, as you can imagine. But again, I don't carry a grudge. I don't get defensive on anything. And I tell people, and I've gotten some very constructive feedback over the last year from my team internal. And they said on Friday's social, it's amazing how non-defensive I actually get. I'm like, the last perfect person walked the earth like 2,000 years ago, guys. I am highly fallible and I am not too proud to admit it, right? So if I'm wrong, I'll say I'm wrong and I'll offer an apology and make it right. Missing step for most people is to make it right. Or I will defend why we have to do it that way through other constraints that exist that they might not be aware of. But that goes back to that communication piece, right? And too many leaders don't want to communicate constraints, especially on those financial issues. And, back to Dave again, too many people try and start a company out of debt. And then they wonder, and all these veteran entrepreneurs and civilian corporate leaders I talk to, the first words out of my mouth when they pitch me on an idea for their new company is, it's going to take you about 3 times longer and 5 times more than you thought it was going to take, no matter how much planning you've put into this. Are you in debt? And they go, and they don't want to talk about it. I'm like, you're doomed. If you're starting this whole thing off while you have a debt in your life, you're going to be doomed. In
Yeah.
Scott's humble opinion, right? Being the biggest Dave fanboy out there.
Well, and I'll validate that. I just finished reading the book Game Changer by Rob Angel. And those of you who don't know who that is, me a couple of weeks ago before I picked it up, it was highly recommended to me by a friend of mine. Rob Angel is the guy who invented Pictionary, the highest grossing board game ever. And when you read that story and you see they've got to here, and then all of a sudden, crap, it was more like 3 steps forward, 2 steps back is kind of what they were doing. But man, there were some times where, you know what? We almost didn't get no Pictionary because of, if it wouldn't been actually, I won't spoil the whole book, but Uncle Jerome was, you got to have an Uncle Jerome if you're going to create a board game. That's all I got to say. If you're out there creating a board game, read the Game Changer, number 1, and then check in your family tree and see if you have an Uncle Jerome, because
I'm going on ancestry.com right now to make sure he's not in the woodwork somewhere.
That's right. Man, because, but really, all joking aside, the point of it is, Uncle Jerome said, here's, I trust you. I believe in you. Here's, I think $20,000, something like that. Really, relatively small. And they went, yeah, that was great. Oh crap. That wasn't enough, because we got to here and we couldn't get anything out. And then they had to go back to Uncle Jerome and add a 0 to that, and then they had to go back to him again. It is that sort of thing, that just what you were saying, Scott, man, well, DIY man himself, that hardwood floor I put down in the house, our old house, that's been 10, 12 years ago, more than that now, 20 years ago, I put it down. That was supposed to be a weekend project. Yeah, no matter of project management would have saved me on that one, because that weekend project turned into 2 weeks. Yeah.
We all have those stories though, but again, tools to the rucksack, right? Like now when you look at replacing the floor, I bet you're going, no.
Yep, I'm hiring Bob's Flooring. That's what I did last time.
Nice.
Well, what I'm curious about, damn it, there's one, Dad, is, we're talking about, what I would call the planning fallacy, how, projects always takes twice as long, costs 3 times as much, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to throw this over to Mr. Project Manager over there. What do you do to fight that, Scott? The story I always tell is, I think it's the UK government, when they get infrastructure deals, or when they get infrastructure plans, they literally double everything that they get in there. And they say, okay, now let's see if they'll approve it. A $1 million project, we're going to go argue that it's $3 million, and then we'll see if you still get approved. Instead of like 1 year, it's a 2-year project. Let's see if you still get approved. I like that. It's an interesting thing, but in a much more real, applicable sense, how do you fight that planning fallacy?
Properly initiate your project. And what I mean by that is, if the project is valid and has value, and so another formula or acronym that my team at DOL knows very well is the POD model that they all use. And anytime we want to launch a new class or a course or whatever, I make somebody fill out a fillable PDF for the POD model. And it's first and foremost, what problem are we solving? Our offerings to solve that problem, and then the pinnacle is the differentiators as to what makes our offering better than the competition or is strong to us, whatever. So first and foremost, if the project isn't solving a problem for you and you can't initiate it properly and get the stakeholder buy-in, identify. So most projects really fail because the initiator, I have an idea and I want to pitch it to Otis and Cam, and I say, okay, I'm just going to lock this whole down and convince them that's a good idea. And to err on the side of caution, I'm going to undersell the price or oversell the price just so I never run out of money, right? Well, corporations also do this, and they commit resources to that as well. So we have a large corporate training coming up in December with a global construction company, and they're trying to right size specifically their initiation and get the best practices across, because they're running the same project or problem, right? their projects are either grossly underestimated, which means they got to tap into reserves and get those. But those are the passion projects that somebody really wanted to sell and did a great salesman job of getting off the ground, or they're vastly overfunded. And when you do either one of those, the alpha and the omega, you're stealing from all those mid-level projects, which are a vital necessity to your company as well. But when you look at your budget and you say we have $100,000 to spend on growth this year, if I think that my new website design is 75,000 of that, in reality, it's only 30,000, right? If I commit 70 to that, that's $40,000 in monies I'm not committing to actually do the other things. That's an employee. That's, new computers for people, right? There's a whole lot of tangible and intangible things we can get for that. So when you initiate projects, what I'll tell you is most projects fail because not enough stakeholders are consulted during the initiation phase. It's normally a person with an idea that sells the idea to someone with the decision-making ability, and then resources are allocated, and then you're off the races, right? And in fact, in all of our training, we kind of mock that. The scenario is Scott's good idea for a party recognizing and rewarding high-performing project managers. And I took a screenshot of a fake email that I wrote to somebody on my team and said, I've got a great idea. I want to run a party. I want to do it in about 6 weeks time. I think we should spend about $20,000 to get it all done. And we can bring it. And it's this whole like very passionate Scott level email, this self-mocking, but also very true to emails that I've gotten in business and in the government and elsewhere that says, hey, go forth and spend this much money. Well, then as we dive into all the project training, how much was allocated for this party? Zero. How much are we spending? $20,000. Where's that $20,000 coming from? Well, it's coming from this, right? So there's a finite pool of things that you can tap into. I refer to those as the big three of people, money, and tech, right? So you can tap out your people, you can quickly tap out your money, and you can overwhelm your tech with what you're trying to do is big three resources. Now, time and stakeholders, there's 100 different other constraints, but not initiating the project, right? Just letting that good idea run and allocating time, money, people, or technology to that idea when there's possibly no value to it.
I'm going to go back to a personnel thing because that's an indicator for me. And the reason I say that's an indicator for me, because if I got somebody in my team that's Mr. Good Idea, and he's trying to sell this thing that he thinks is the greatest idea, but he's not done anything with anybody else, that's a pretty selfish person in my book, because it's self-serving that his project gets approved. And
no, I'm going to challenge and say it takes maturity, not old. And I'm the same way, right? Like I've gotten sold on ideas. We really need to do this, right? This DOL squads or this, right? And I commit all this time and energy to it. And then all of a sudden I look up and I go, and this isn't meant to be bash that person episode, but, and for the record, I'm not even connected to them anymore on any social media. So she has taken that anyway, initiative. But all these ideas, I go, yeah, I trust this person. They said it's a good idea. Therefore, by proxy, it's a good idea. And now with maturity on my and surviving those ideas, now I remember those pain points and I'm like, time out. Let's explore whether that's even a good idea. And let's take it to, Otis, Heather, my wife, and the team and see. And sometimes I'll pitch an idea to the team just to see like how quick they all recoil and cross their arms and go like, no. And I'm like, ooh, that idea might not be good, right? And that's my idea that I'm passionate about. And so I'll walk and have a cigar and think it over and go, I was pitching it like this. If I pitch it like this, you're going to all be receptive to it. Or one of them says something else. And it's just that being adjustable. And just because you have a title doesn't mean that you're infallible all of a sudden. You still have to be adjustable and you still have to trust, right? You have to trust your people and understand your constraints. But Otis, that's maturity, man. Like that's the whole, like been around that block and that last one hurt. So I'm not doing that again. And I've told my wife 100 times, after everything in my life, and I've got a crazy, weird, not great, but weird background, right? Like I worked on Wall Street, I've worked in the Caribbean, I've worked in Australia. I was 18 Charlie in Special Forces and a GS-13 in the government. And then
18 Charlie is
Special Forces Engineering Sergeant.
Engineering, the guy who carries the demo.
I was a demo guy on the team, the breacher. I mean, and like all these things have culminated. There's not one day there's something from my background somewhere I don't tap into, most often my SF background, because I think that really defines who I am as a person. But there's not one day I don't tap back into that and go, nope, that's I can tell you no plan survives contact with the enemy. And that means that as soon as we launch this course, somebody's going to come out with, I can't register properly. My credit card got double charged, this, that, whatever. And we've got to have all hands on decks. And it's that experienced couple of maturity that allows us to be adaptable and still be successful.
I want to touch on that real quick, just because I think it's such an important thing. So what we're saying here, because I've said this many times before, also on your plan. Yeah, your plan is a guide. It's not, and Camden, you and I have had this conversation. There's no such thing as a perfect plan, and that's why we say, no plan survives first contact. You can put it in the business realm and say first action. Things change because there's things outside of your control, those risks that you identify that you hope that you mitigated, that you probably didn't. But I don't want to give the impression that because of that, you shouldn't plan. What makes special forces, the Green Berets, so good at their skills, so good at their tasks, so good at accomplishing and succeeding in every mission they go on, is because they put in the effort to do all that planning. They work through contingencies, and they practice the
Rehearsals.
the oh shits, they practice the oh no's, they practice I never would have thought that would happen. And even when they practice, they don't practice something and it happens, because they put all this effort in. That action, that stimulant, to go into a little bit of Aristotle, that stimulant that happens in that pause before they take action, before a Green Beret takes action, they can make that decision. And it's the best decision because they prepared for all these other ones. Mm-hmm. And that one's just a little bit different. That's all.
Well, you said something interesting. I'll double down on as well, but you said they'll make a decision. And far too many leaders out there, when faced with something even slightly adverse in what they thought it was going to look like, freeze. And it's part of their limbic system, right? Like fight or flight and all that other stuff. Like it's a survival mechanism, so I can't mock it, but they'll just freeze. Well, a Green Beret knows it. Like you get off the X in an ambush. The X is the point of the ambush, right? Like you get off the X real fast because staying on it just means more stuff flying your way. So we know to make a decision and go, and then adapt, overcome, troubleshoot, and do all that, and take that lesson to business, right? Like I can get a negative email. So, all right, here's something interesting. We put a course on a virtual instructor-led course for 500 military first responders, and for the first time, it was like October class this year, so way into the end of the year. For the first time, I woke up in the morning and there was 37 emails in my inbox saying, "Can you do something about the inappropriate chat?" And I went to the team, and as a collective, we all said, like, there's never been any issues with inappropriate chat and all that. And so I went through, pulled the records for the course, looked at it, and it was highly inappropriate chat, and it was truly distracting from the course. So I told the team, 37 out of 500 isn't quite 10%, but it's close enough to catch my attention, right? That 500 people in the course and 37. So we turned off the chat, and I logged in as the owner of the company to the next Zoom meeting and said the first 5 minutes, like, look, we turned off the chat. It's my decision. Don't bash the CPT. And if I find out any more, you got a freebie for the first session. If you do it again, we're booting you out of the class. And I'm not even offering a refund, right? Like, and I put on email addressing it and everything. In response to my email to all course participants, I got another 48 people saying, new from the 37, saying, thank God you took this action. It was really distracting from the class. We were about to pull out because of it. And then another, on top of that, 12 people emailed me and said they did pull out of the class and they were just not even going to bring it up because, so now we're right at 100 people out of 500 in the class that were directly impacted. But because I went to the team and put things in place, you have to be decisive and you have to follow through on that, because 100 people with a negative experience in a course in October is horrible in today's social media economy, right? So we've won them all back as customers, not because I did anything great, but because I made a decision and followed through with the decision, no matter how many people that it irritated along the way, that, well, the chat should be free and I can talk to my friends in Hawaii. And I'm like, text them offline. I don't care what you do offline, but you just have to make a decision and stick to it. Otherwise, you're doomed.
Yeah. And, I think when it comes to like defining where that, one of y'all's many superpowers is Green Berets, defining where that comes from as far as
Otis, I sense that he's being sarcastic.
That's not sarcasm. Superpower, maybe not, but power I'll give you. But, it's that the decision making and the preparation, you talk about the war gaming and that kind of stuff that you do, in the build up to taking action. The thing that you're doing is taking away the pain of surprise. And I was thinking about that a lot when you were talking the Aristotle reference earlier. And I don't remember which Stoic said it, but, talk about how if you get smacked, not hard, but if you just get smacked, it hurts so bad immediately because it catches you off guard. But then if you know it's coming, it doesn't hurt because you know it's going to go away right away. And the same type of thing happens to the business. When something surprises you, it freezes you. You freak out. But if you were treating that as a possible outcome, as a thing that might be coming, and you take away that surprise, you're taking away the bulk of that pain, because the pain is the bulk of the surprise is the bulk of that pain that you're feeling.
Yeah. Well said. I'm going to guess it was Marcus Aurelius. That's my other Stoic that I'll throw it to.
That's usually the good guess.
Go to.
I'll sound like I contribute to the Stoic conversation. Say, oh, it was easily Marcus Aurelius who said that. So
I'll add to that smack in the face, because when we used to do hand to hand back at group, we hit each other. I mean, not full on, but the whole point of it was you need to get used to getting smacked in the face, because if you're not used to getting smacked in the face, that first time, even if somebody's sucker punching you, you're not. Man, it makes all the difference in the world. How many times I got punched in the face Tuesday and Thursday mornings, man. It was about 3 years worth of getting punched in the face every Tuesday and Thursday morning.
One of the first questions I got asked as a brand new guy in fifth group on my team was, you ever been in a real fight? And I'm like, you guys are all Green Berets much longer than I am. So if you're defining real fight as a gunfight or something, no, I haven't been in a real fight, but I've been in some knockdown drag outs. So like, okay. And it was almost like a relief that, I didn't walk in as this, new guy that had never been in a fight before. And but you have to be prepared for it, right? Otherwise you fear it. And in the fear of that unexpected truly just crushes entrepreneurial souls. It's, because what do we do, right? It's my money that I'm investing back into the company. And so I think that my trainers will agree. I pay them well. I'm completely debt free, again, because of Dave Ramsey. But when I look at what I'm spending and everything, right, there's a comfort place because I know that I've got that retained earnings. Again, a beautiful thing from Entree Leadership. Treat your business like your personal bank account with an emergency fund, right, that I can tap into. So when you're prepared, the sting of that slap or that hit is like, okay, that sucked. I didn't want to spend $100 today unexpectedly because I forgot to cancel my Vimeo license or something, right? But okay, it wasn't, like, hey boys, kids, we're not eating dinner tonight because dad forgot to cancel Vimeo, right? So, and the credit cards aren't maxed out or anything else. So you just get used to it when your attitude towards failure changes quite a bit and the comfort is there.
I heard this recently, and I didn't take any boxing lessons or anything when I was younger, but I've heard that apparently a lot of boxing coaches, when you're young and you're getting into it, they'll hold an empty glove in front of you and just punch you in the face repeatedly with it. So you get used to just not the strength of the hit, but just the fact that something's that close to your face. Because then when you get into your first fight and you are getting hit, you can still keep your eyes open, you can still counter, and you can see that kind of stuff. So my quick question off of that is, what is the business equivalent of practicing getting punched in the face?
Oh, I mean, my gut, so it's not dead air. My guts immediately went to train like you fight, right? I mean, it's preparation, it's rehearsal, and it's getting the feedback, right? So so here's what I'll take it. If you're a leader and you like to innovate, and I think of myself, I've innovated a few things that I'm quite proud of. But if you're a leader and you like to innovate and yet you hate criticism, that's going to sting. And I used to, when I first started launching the Institute of Project Managers products in the US, I would get a negative LinkedIn. I would almost, and I'm a combat veteran, right? I would almost like get nauseous before I put together a LinkedIn post, just knowing that somebody was going to say it's not worth it or something negative about it, or this is crap or something. I would get like all bent up and I would sweat, and I would just over a LinkedIn post. Like, how stupid is that? And the LinkedIn post, right? But again, with trial and error, in the very first criticisms of things that I was doing, trial and error, I would hate it. And I would take it internally. And Otis will tell you, I would like overcompensate for it, because he's known me a long time, and I'm not going to lie, right? I would overcompensate for it and try. And now if somebody says something, I'm like, all right, you go be you, right? Like I've had the criticisms, I've had the punches to the face. I'm still standing here, you know. The Green Beret Foundation is funding our certifications for transitioning Green Berets. That's a huge point of pride for me, and validation that if somebody says it's crap, the Green Beret Foundation thinks it's not crap. The VA funds all veterans for our programs, right? More and more companies are buying into it and all this other stuff. So when somebody says, oh, I had a bad experience with them and it's worthless because they're Australian, I'm like, okay, like now it's just water off the duck's back, right? But again, 5 years ago, it would almost keep me up at night. I would stay up all night just waiting for the next comment on LinkedIn to answer and reply, just to show that I wasn't scared of their whole thought process and defend why we were doing it. Now I post something, even a highly personal something on LinkedIn, I'm not even checking for 2 days because I don't care. It's LinkedIn. Like it's, I'm not looking for a job. It's LinkedIn. If somebody wants to say I'm dumb, okay, great. I'm dumb. You're better looking and smarter than I am. Like, I don't care. I'm not out there secretly plotting and how to win them back like I used to be. And that's my experience, right? Is I've grown as a leader into that. And I wouldn't be successful if I was still as sensitive to criticism today as I was even 2 years ago.
Well, what I was going to say is, you know, and we wound up getting back around to the question there, because really what you're talking about is, you know, to use the analogy again, punched in the face is, well, the best way to not be surprised when you get punched in the face by the other team is to have your team punch you in the face, so you're ready for it. And that's really what you're talking about there, is you're getting that criticism internally so that you can, you know, grow past that.
Well, here's another thing, and you told me the theme for the month is celebrations, right? So here's what I will say that's topical and relevant to the theme. Too many business owners, too many business executives, too many businesses, whatever, and this is a very SF thing as well, right? Fail to celebrate small victories. And now I'm not the cheerleader, right? Like, hey, Heather, the LinkedIn posted any typos, high five, come here and give me a hug, right? Like, I'm not celebrating like that level small victories. And she's not guilty of, anyway, that's me, not her. If there was a typo in a LinkedIn post, that wasn't a jab. But sometimes in the Q course or in selection, right? Like, it would take every single ounce of willpower I had just to unzip the sleeping bag, because I knew that cold was going to hit. And I would sit there for 5 minutes, like, this is going to suck. This is going to suck. This is going to suck. And I almost wore it today, but Angus, who you guys both know, was mocking me for wearing it too much, is my Embrace the Suck t-shirt, right? Which I wear all the time. Because now I don't care. And I'll celebrate the small victories, and not to be overly optimistic about everything, like I'm some medicated weirdo, but, you know, I will tell the team, like, I say thank you when they write an AER post every session. I tell them great jobs when they do something. I do little tiny things on the regular to let them know that I appreciate it. And all those things are small victories. Running a 2-hour session successfully, one of 12 that makes a course comprehensively great, is a victory. And if I was a leader that just went, of course you ran it, I'm paying you $300, why wouldn't you run it well? Difference in mindset. I'm full of thanks and gratitude for them coming up prepared and doing that. And you know what? Because I've got a team of people who will arrive early and stay late, and they don't complain at all. And if they do complain, it's valid. And I listen now, because it's not just some SF level bitching. It's truly something that's going to keep us from hitting the pinnacle that they believe we can reach as well.
We've danced around one of my favorite leadership things that I talk about all the time. And so now I'm just going to have to talk about it, is the trust triad, right? You know, as a leader, if you think about trust and as a triad, you trust yourself to make the right decision. You trust your team to perform, And then that third leg is your team trusts you. And that goes back to what you were talking about earlier in your see and act, that act part, you're communicating with them, you're trusting them to perform. And then guess what? They trust you. And that's the way it works. And, as a leader, that's what it is. And going back to Camden, your question, how do you practice getting punched in the face in the business world? You talk to your team, you throw it out there on the table, you brainstorm, you involve the stakeholders. You don't just say, all right, this is what we're doing. It's get input, and you create that culture of input and exchange of ideas and thoughts. And then you go through and you do the next best thing is you go through risk analysis. What are all the risks that we can have? I mean, all right, so we've all decided this is a good idea. So what can go wrong? And we build out contingencies and we identify risk and we mitigate those risks. That's the same thing as what we used to do, on the teams and going through rehearsals and pre-mission training and all these things we would do. Before the show in the green room, we mentioned the 96-hour planning sequence. That was the big thing that we did for the Cold War. You would isolate and plan your mission, 96 hours to do one thing. So you think about that, that's the part of the culture of the Green Berets, is that deep level of understanding and planning. And even though now in the box, if you will, in Afghanistan, well, no longer Afghanistan, previously in Afghanistan and Iraq and other places around the world where Green Berets are executing missions, they're able to execute them quicker because of all the work that they've done prior to. And you can do that same, you can take that same principle and apply it to your business. You do the big ground foundational work, and going back to rugby, Camden, the fundamentals are your foundation. Mm-hmm. You do the fundamentals better than anybody else. You don't have to worry about fancy stuff. And that's all the Green Berets do. They do the fundamentals better than anybody else.
Yep.
Well, speaking of rugby, because the other question I had written down here actually had to do with rugby. So great job on that, Dad. You'll really get this. I think we've had this conversation probably about close to 50 times over here. You talk about game fit a lot in terms of rugby, literally having the fitness to play an entire game of rugby. And it's all, we always make the joke of John Patterson back in the day. You're not fit. You're not fit. You're not starting on Saturday with this Kiwi accent that I can't do as well anymore. But from there, it's one of these things where you keep working, and you never really reach game fitness. And there's this interesting thing that happens where when you are more in shape, you work harder, and you hit more rucks, you make more tackles, you put yourself in a position to do more. And the reason I'm bringing that up is to connect it to something that I've talked off the air a few times about this, the efficiency paradox. Where it's you got we'll say 40 hours of work you're doing this week, where it's like, okay, I want to be better, so I want to make my work more efficient so I can be more productive and get all these things done faster, so I don't have to do extra work. But then what happens is you shrink that, let's say you finish that 40 hours of work in 35 hours. And then you look at that 5 hours and go, well, what else am I going to do? And you start adding more things to your list. And you can create this, this paradox where you are continually getting more efficient, continually getting more productive, but you're also draining yourself at that same level that you have been because you keep adding in that work. So that was a long intro to it, but I kind of want to throw it over to you, Scott, of how do you fight that kind of a paradox? Because we want to be more efficient, but also, you don't want to continually add on to that workload.
Well, efficiency is elusive, first of all, right? Like I consider myself I'll be so bold as to say, I consider myself highly productive and super efficient at what I do. In fact, I will intentionally waste time finding a new system to make myself more efficient and productive, right? And then I just took the team from MS Teams to Slack to say Teams doesn't integrate with these things that we're doing, Slack does. So I will always fight for that, but it is elusive. So one stock saying that I haven't thrown out here from SF land that I'll say today is train like you fight, right? And so if you treat everything like it's real and you don't half-ass it and you put the right amount of energy into it, you're going to be game fit, air quotes, whenever you're ready. And I hate that I've dropped Dave Ramsey's name 6 times today, and I'm about to drop one of his personalities' name because I have a big Dave Ramsey event next week that I'm going to. But if you haven't read it yet, I'm doing all this preparation in anticipation of this event next week, reading all the personalities' books and doing all this stuff just so I can be conversive. And historically, I will admit, I haven't been a big fan of this personality, Christy Wrights, just for some other, didn't resonate or whatever. She just released Take Back Your Time is a book, and I got it, and boom, hooked. She did a phenomenal job. In fact, I bought 10 copies, and I asked the first 10 people on my team who wants a free copy of Take Back Your Time. I'm gonna send it to you on Kindle, and I gave it back to my team. So it's phenomenal, and she defines it as seasons, though, right? And so in some seasons you'll have the ability to be highly efficient and put the 40-hour work week in, and in some seasons you'll get it done in 5 hours, and then have the ability to choose if you want to commit the other 35 to personal time and reflexation or whatever, or get back at it at work. And she does a phenomenal job. I'm almost massacring how good of a job she does at it. And I'm telling you, like,
So much for that sponsorship we
bonus.
were going to get from her too. Thanks.
Yeah, no, she nailed it with this book. Like, she crushed it with this book. It's up there just shy of Entree Leadership, in my opinion. Like, it is good. And I won't say that about all the personalities books, and I'll leave it at that. So I'll make them ask me which ones I like and don't like. Nonetheless, if you understand what season of life you're in and what you're trying to get, sometimes you're not going to be able to work out. Some days I'm not going to be able to do the things that I wanted. Some days I have to push an urgent constrained task back just because life happens, right? My extended family is going through some stuff right now, and I'm prioritizing some time to give back to them as well. So sometimes other bigger picture things that impact me happen. So part of being game fit is understanding what game fit is. And now I run almost every day, and I don't run the same as I ran. I'm 46 now, when I was 26 and in the Q course, right? But I don't judge myself anymore either. And for a long time, I was like, man, I used to run 6-minute miles routinely. Like, now I'm at 7. That's a whole minute off. Like, oh my gosh. Well, I'm like, dude, you're 46 years old and you're running every day. Call that a success and move on, right? Different season of my life. And I'm not racing marathons. I'm not out to do anything. So you just got to understand what game fit looks like, depending on, in Christy's words, the season of life and the season that you're in. And those seasons will change routinely. But anyway, so there's my extra Dave plug today.
I was going to say, bringing it back to rugby, it's understanding your job for your team. And sometimes you have the job where it's like your job is to go put in that 80-hour work week because you need to be the person to do it. Sometimes that's someone else's job right now, and it's your job to be planning for the next stuff and taking some time off, spending time with your family, so that then next month when it's your time again, you're ready to go.
Amen. Well said.
Well, man, yeah, as I would expect, having you on the show, Scott, this could easily go on another hour or so.
We gotta bring him on once a month so that we can keep them short.
This is like, no, hell no, hard pass.
Oh man. So I'm just going to kick us off with what I learned. And I know you've said it to me probably 100 times, but I just love the C and ACT acronym. And let's make sure I got the words right. Select, educate, and execute, because you updated it from Empower. And then ACT is adjust, communicate, and trust.
Yep.
And that's what you want to do with your team. As a leader, think, see, and act. Scott, you are the master of acronyms, my brother. Camden, what'd you learn?
It was great to hear from Scott. 7 out of 10 ideas that you come up with are bad or poorly timed, because I definitely have gone through that in my own businesses. Of walk into a room, it's like, hey guys, y'all got to hear this one. It's like, what the hell are you thinking, Cam? And I've gotten that so many times, but it's too much fun coming up with ideas. So I'm going to keep going. I'm going to come up with my 10, and I know 3 of them will be good, but the 7 out of 10 being bad is eye-opening for me on that.
I learned you not trained in boxing and has sarcastic remarks that make the Green Berets. No, I did like the I learned the punching in the face analogy, and that really, I hadn't ever thought of it that way before, and I never heard boxers doing that. It makes a lot of sense, but I do like the muscle memory that it builds up and all that. And every time I'm on with you two, I learn twice as much than I knew about rugby, even being a rugby fan before. So just by breathing the same Zoom air as you two, so it's always complete value add. And the list of things that I learned would be, Otis is trying to wrap this up, and I'd talk for another 30 minutes.
No,
well, I'd like to quickly, I would like to apologize to any Green Berets who were offended at my apparent sarcasm,
My
because
feelings are
y'all will
deeply
find
hurt,
me.
man. Like, how dare you? How dare you call us sarcastic superheroes?
There's way too much info out there for on me. You guys will find me in
No,
a heartbeat.
I don't
I'm
blame
not
you
safe.
at all. Oh, that's awesome.
Scott, how do people learn more about DOL Coach and you? Connect with you.
DOLcoach.com, LinkedIn, Facebook. We have a Mighty Network, dolcoach.mn.co.com if you want to join the Mighty Network. Otherwise, it's scott@dolcoach.com, and I'll answer emails as I have time and get around to them, and depending on the season of life that I'm in at the moment. I won't give out my cell phone number because I've actually bought a Zoom number so that people can't call me on my cell phone. It rings so much all night. So email is preferable, and the website has a contact us form right at the bottom if you want more information.
Awesome, man. Really appreciate your time, Scott. As always, a lot of fun, and man, a lot to learn from. I know our audience is going to get a lot out of this, so appreciate it. Camden, run us out.
Thank you all for listening to today's show. Special thanks to our guest, Scott Kender, for joining us today, and our sponsor, Tribe and Purpose. Find your tribe, find your purpose. You can check out recent episodes of The Cam and Otis Show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, and check out a full archive at thecamandotisshow.buzzsprout.com. The Cam and Otis Show is on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next week.